I want to bring in Professor Gabriel P. Mathi now. He's the Associate Professor, the Department of Economics, American University. Professor Gabriel, you tell me this. Can we say that Donald Trump behaving like a true businessman who is also now a president? He's working unlike his predecessors. He's talking numbers. He's talking percentage. What do you make of what this will now lead to geopolitics in terms of connections?
Well, I think we can see it in the stock markets, which are plunging around the world.
Yes.
So it doesn't seem like it's very good for business. It's meant to improve American business, and yet the stock markets are crashing. I don't understand why we're imposing tariffs on India. India is an ally. India is a democracy. We should be working together with India, trying to contain China. Instead, what we're doing is putting tariffs on our allies, weakening American soft power abroad and weakening our allies. I find it to be totally nonsensical.
Fair point. Would you want to elaborate on that? Because in many ways, that's where a politician or a political mind comes in, that you may want to put reciprocal tariff on all countries, but you also have to look at the country that's been your friend.
Yes, and we must say it's come out since that meeting that it's not exactly a reciprocal tariff. In fact, the calculation is based on the American trade deficit. So it's not directly based on, for example, the tariffs that India is imposing. It's based on the amount of imports that America takes in. And so essentially, if America is running a trade surplus, if we're exporting more than we're importing to a country, they get a 10% tariff no matter what. And then the tariffs are based on the American trade deficit. We could imagine a more sensible policy that would be based on tit for tat, but it appears that the White House has said that that's not exactly, in fact, how the tariffs have been determined.
Do you believe this individual percentage has been chosen? There must have been negotiations and discussions on his table as well from his experts. Do you think that, like he says, Modi is a friend, India is a friend, and such discussions have possibly played into him deciding that individual number?
Well, we can't say for sure. It was widely reported that the tariffs were only decided a few hours before the meeting. I suppose that will come out in the next few days. But let's think about a country like Vietnam, which the United States is trying to ally with to try to contain China, which I think is an important geopolitical objective. The U.S. has now put on 46% tariffs on Vietnam. That will essentially really decimate their export industry and push them closer to China. So if Donald Trump sees China as a force to be contained, then these tariffs are going to be counterproductive because we're putting huge tariffs on our geopolitical allies.
This is an interesting point, because while talking as a businessman, is he looking really at who the allies could be? We'll also look at the United Kingdom, the European Union. I want to bring in Rabinder Sachdev now. Rabinder, you tell me, as Director India Affairs, how do you look at? There are diverse perspectives coming in, very interesting. When Donald Trump says a 46% for Vietnam, 34% for China, 26% for India, what kind of thinking do you think has gone behind this?
Thank you very much. See, a couple of things. The way Trump operates, he solicits from his advisors their plans. So let's say the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, etc., as Gabriel is mentioning, all of them came up with their individual or collective plans. And at the last minute, then Trump goes with his gut feel as to which plan he would go by. That's his standard, modus operandi in his business and in his politics. One. Secondly, let's work backwards. The objective of these tariffs, is, balancing out unfair trade, which has been a pet peeve of Trump for the last 50 odd years. You go back to his interviews with New York Times, with, Oprah Winfrey, wherever, in Playboy magazine, he's always been talking, the world has been ripping us. In the 80s, he would say Japan, and then he would say the sheikhs and the Arab world. So that has been very much a pet peeve belief with him. And now he's got that chance ultimately to do it. So in a way, yesterday was his moment. It was his crowning moment to implement what he really genuinely thinks, by the way. Now, what he really wants, they are looking at his advisors and Trump raising money from these tariffs. Sure, it's to balance out the unfair trade. All of that is there. But Peter Navarro, his trade advisor, he has estimated that the US could raise up to $6 trillion over the next 10 years through these tariffs. There is some other study which says, Navarro is obviously an acolyte of Trump, but some other study which says $3 trillion. So $3 to $6 trillion is the money they're looking to raise. Tariffs will make America rich. So he's looking to raise the tariffs, bring in $3 to $6 trillion into the US Treasury, and then use that money to give tax breaks. See, his political agenda is low taxes. Okay. So how does he lower the taxes? The US without, how does he lower the taxes? He needs more revenues in the Treasury, right? So, or without going into more of a deficit. So he brings in, or this money comes in, which then he uses to lower the taxes, one. Secondly, he uses this money to pacify some segments of industry or working class who are negatively impacted. So let's say the auto workers in the US are being negatively impacted. What he's going to do is give some rebates to the industry. In fact, he already mentioned, if you see, American consumers, since the prices of cars will go up, he's saying that we will give you rebate on your income tax on the interest. So in a sense, he's robbing Peter to pay Paul to make sure that, his political agenda goes side by side. So that's a big one. Quickly to Vietnam.
Go ahead.
Vietnam is a classic example. American firms will hammer because many of them have shifted over the last 20 years. They're huge manufacturing outsourcing in Vietnam. So, these kind of tariffs on Vietnam will negatively, majorly impact many of the American companies who have their, operations there in Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, etc. So there would be an impact not only on the firms of these countries, which are local there and who are exporting to America, but also on American corporations, on their China plus one strategy, who were moving away from China, going to Indonesia, going to Vietnam. Vietnam benefited hugely because of that. Now, all of those firms would be, in a dilemma. Last point, this will begin a season of what I say, 10% hunting. Companies will now hunt out the countries where the tariffs are 10%. And look to locate. We'll start scenario modeling right now, must be happening in corporate boardrooms. Oman has a 10%. Some other country has a 10%. They will look to...
A lot of African nations, 10%. Egypt is 10%. Yeah.
So you would, if you're a global corporation, you would look to see, okay, let's say auto parts manufacturers from India who would be majorly hurting, right? They could see, okay, Oman is a nearby place, fairly stable and only 10% tariff. Why not I shift some of my manufacturing there?
So that is something, yes, the companies could be looking at.